Hello and welcome to Film Companion South. In this episode, we're going to be talking about Sennai, directed by Jaikumar Sedhuraman. Now, we all know of the Dalit cinema by big-name Tamil filmmakers like Pa Ranjit and Mari Selvaraj. But parallelly and interestingly, a kind of smaller stream of Dalit cinema has begun to emerge in Tamil cinema. Leading this, one of the foremost is Milina Manimekalai's very wonderful Madathi. If you haven't seen the film, you should do so at once because to my knowledge, it is the only Tamil Dalit film which has a female gaze, not just the director's gaze but also the protagonist. And now we have Sennai, which means red dog. It is playing on the OTT platform Good Show, that is GUDSHO, and it features actors familiar to indie cinema like Semmalar Anam and the writer activist Bava Chelladurai. Now this part of the review is not about Dalit cinema but about Tamil cinema in general. Except for the major filmmakers, and we know who many of them are, very few give importance to form, to the way the film is taken. They all want to say something, they all have a story ready, they all have interesting things to say, but how to say it? And I'm not just talking about camera movements and other things, I'm talking about the script itself, the screenplay itself. How do you take a one line of a message that you have or of a story that you have and present it to the audience in an interesting way? And right from the title, director Jaikumar Sedhuraman springs a complete surprise. Now look at the title itself, look at the font, the design. It is made up of arrows and what looks like the bushy tails of foxes or dogs. Now the Dalits in this film are the Sennai of the title, so the bushy tails come from them, and the other in the film are the dominant caste who predominantly worship Lord Ram, and the arrows in the title come from him. Now a clever title design alone cannot make a film, of course, but this film itself is so strange and beautiful in its design, in its screenplay design. One part of it is a traditional drama with character arcs and narrative arcs. Another part of it is a suspense drama. A third part of it is a street play that is performed in front of a wall with an illustration of Ambedkar. Throughout the story, we see people getting ready for this performance. Another thing about the film is that it is about life, about the survival of these Dalits, about what they do to live, and yet a majority of it is set in a crematorium, which is a place of death. Now, in a film like this about dominant caste and oppressed caste, I think it's inevitable that some kind of messaging comes across, but what I really liked about the way the director handles this is how he leaves a lot of this messaging to his visuals and to quotes by famous people. An example of the messaging coming across through the visuals would be how an oppressed woman drags a corpse across a temple, a mosque and a church. As the camera keeps tracking her, she passes all these places of worship. Another instance of visual messaging is three people wearing the three colors of the Indian flag, saffron, white and green. The shot is filmed through their legs where we just see these colors, and the rest of the film is taking place on the other side. And the messages, when they appear as quotes, come from the words of Rumi and Ambedkar and Lenin, so we see them as words on a calendar or words that are painted on a wall. The important thing is these words get across to us, but they never thrust into the mouths of the character, so it's not like people are saying these words. We see these words and recognize them as part of the film's larger socio-political landscape. And even when the characters speak about messagey things like education, the importance of education, the screenplay takes care that these words are placed far enough apart in the movie, in the screenplay, so that they don't come across like a lump of preachy statements. For example, early on we hear a trans woman say that education is important, but much later, a little later, we hear a Dalit man say how he was denied education. He actually got into a school, but because of the oppression by the teachers and the students, he voluntarily quit school. Now, the most beautiful thing about the screenplay of this film is how the central messaging, or not even the central messaging, the central whatever the director wants to convey, right? Because it's more than just like a platitude or a message. There's something larger here. Whatever the director wants to convey, it takes the nature of a fable, like a Panchatantra fable. Now this fable becomes the spine of the screenplay, and a crucial character in this fable is named Periyavar, which could be a reference to Periyar. Now I'm going to leave it for you to find out what this fable is all about, because that's what the film is all about. But it is broadly about how an ecosystem, in order to survive, needs both vegetarians, and you know who vegetarians refers to in this case, needs both vegetarians and non-vegetarians. And the boldest stroke of Sennai is that this fable is narrated not as a big lump, as a central chunk, but bit by the various characters in the film. You first hear a little about the fable, and then there's somebody else who continues the fable, and then there's somebody else who continues the fable, all spaced apart so that it doesn't come together all at once. Now, this fable, because of its very nature, now on the one side you have actual reality happening, right? And on the other side you have this fictional fable kind of thing happening. And this lends a very interesting jagged quality to the film because it is not a straight narrative. And because of this, the film is able to accommodate a number of styles and a number of symbolisms. Yes, some of the symbolism can be very, very heavy, like the fact that a dominant caste man is lying in a hospital bed with a book of Manu Nidhi by his side, or the fact that a bunch of blind men are often seen singing Dalit songs. And there is one outright villain, a government doctor who won't even touch Dalits in order to treat them. Now, the fact isn't that there aren't people like these. Surely there are. But when you're writing a screenplay, you have to kind of find shades in people to give them like a few more traits and characters that you can play with. And this guy appears particularly as a very, very one-dimensional villain. But all taken, Sennai is a very, very impressive debut. I'll just look at it visually. There are at least two point of view shots from the point of view of dogs that are following the people, and these could be the Sennai of the title. And in another very, very almost French New Wave kind of touch, a man actually spits on the camera lens as if rejecting this kind of cinema itself. The film actually takes the name of a tea stall and calls it Tevar Tea Stall. You don't find the names of these other casts usually mentioned in such films, and there is a madman in the film whose blabbering probably makes the most sense in the screenplay. And the fact that all of this has been packed into just 1 hour is probably the most impressive thing of all. Now I'm going to end with a spoiler, so those of you who don't want the spoiler, please just go ahead to the next video that you're going to watch. There is a person here named Anita who actually becomes a doctor, unlike the real life Anita who could not become one because of a failure in the NEET exam. And when such a hopeful touch occurs in this movie, it feels utterly organic rather than feeling forced in order to give a happy ending. And that's what's really nice about Sennai. It is a movie made with conviction. It is a movie made with the desire to tell something. It is a movie made with obvious messagey instincts, but the way the screenplay is written, the way the movie is filmed, the way the characters act, it comes across like a piece of cinema rather than a political pamphlet that is simply thrown at our faces so that we can read what is there. So that's it about Sennai. If you like this review, do subscribe to Film Companion South, and see you soon at the movies.